Good morning. Okay. Today is the 28th of November, 2018. This is the nybbles.io daily programming stream. My name is Jeff. I write code every day. I stream it here on Twitch. I am continuing to work on finishing the parser. So yesterday after the stream, I did a little bit of work towards the switch stuff. So I was able to add to the Lexer the ability for it to recognize switch case and fall through. And yeah, so today, and I created a test file. So we've just got a variable, got a switch, we've got some cases. So now we can work on the parsing part of this, get it into the AST, and get it into the compiler, the code dump. So let's take a look at this. So I do have switch expression in this in the AST. Do I have case? No. Hey, Slayer Darth. I'm doing okay. Sure. I believe the Nightbot music interface is oh, okay. Yeah, let me know. Sleepy Lagoon. Okay. It's not in the list, so I'd have to. Ah, yes. All right, hold on a sec. Oh, this isn't. This is the one, right? You can hear it. Yeah, I don't have. See, I have a curated list of music in Nightbot, and you can only play what's in there, and this track's not in there, so I had to play it by hand. Yeah, they don't make music like that anymore. Hey, Raul Rita. Doing good. This is a classic. This is Henry Mancini. This is bound to get this one banned on YouTube, but oh well. Okay. Okay, so I added, excuse me, AST node types. I already had switch, but I added case and fall through, and I added builder functions for those. And the other thing we need to do is very similar to the width. Am I feeling better? Sorta, not really. I guess it depends. If I don't pay attention to it, I'm okay. But I try to keep busy, you know, because I can only sleep so much. So the width, expression, we had to create a stack because when we're parsing, we need to be able to detect, which reminds me, there's, I think there's a long-standing bug here I haven't fixed yet. Yeah. But we need to know where we're at in what the current width is, because we have then constructs that are subordinate to that. And so when we're parsing and we're doing member access, the special member access, we need to know what the context is under which we're doing that. Well, so for switch and case, it's the same thing. Fall through is only valid within a case. Case is only valid within a switch. So that means that we need some additional stacks. I shall now return to the copyright safe. Not that it'll matter much at this point. Oops. Hey, Swills. How you doing? The tall pants? Okay, so we've got our stacks. So we clear those out. Okay. So that should give us all of the tools we need. All right. So I think these are simple enough that I can just use the keyword parser. Okay. So I saw something, Amazon had some kind of AI machine learning thing. Oh, this is the one for satellites. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so for the fall through literal, we want to look at if the different language. Okay, so for the fall through node, right? So within a case, by default, Basecode will be the opposite of C and C++ or C# or Java. You have to specifically tell the compiler that you want it to fall through that block. And so we have a fall through statement that serves that purpose, but it has to be within a case. It can't function outside of a case. There we go. So we look up the current case from the case stack. If it's null, we're in an invalid state for a fall through. We issue an error, we return null. Otherwise, we create our fall through node, we add it to the case. I'm going to say this is the right-hand side of the case. We'll say the right-hand side of the case is going to be the block. And the left-hand side will be the expression for that case. So we add the statement, or we add the fall through node. Do I want to make that? How do I do that? I'm going to come back to that. Okay, so then for case, I need to look up, helps if I spell it right. Hey, Mr. Wormhole. And Meshuggah Sahin, sorry. This is the parser for Basecode, at least the bootstrap version. I do like puzzle games, yeah. Okay, so for the case, we look up the current switch. If there isn't one, that's an error. Otherwise, we create a case, node, We push it onto the case stack in the AST builder. And I'm not even, maybe we need this, maybe we don't, I don't know. I'm kind of waffling on that one, but for now, yeah, you can post links here. We defer popping it off. We look, if there's a colon immediately after the case, then it's the default case. There's no expression, that's our default. So we just consume the colon and then we parse the expression. Otherwise, we parse whatever the matching expression should be for the case. We put that on the left-hand side, then we're expecting a colon, then we parse the block, or whatever comes after that. Right? It could be a block, it could be a single statement. And during this process, this case is at the top of the case stack. So that looks okay. So switch is going to be very similar. So there is no existing parent. Bootstrap is a word that refers to the process of bringing something up. Yeah, it's a very general term. You can bootstrap anything, right? You bootstrap business. You'll hear people talk about bootstrapping their business. What does that mean? That means that they have a teeny tiny amount of money and they use that teeny tiny amount of money to go make a little bit more money. Then they take that money they just made, they put that back in and they make a little bit more. And that process repeats until the business becomes self-sustaining. In compiler design, bootstrapping just refers to the process of writing the first version of the compiler, typically not in the language of the compiler itself. And then at some point, that bootstrap version is sufficient that you're able to write the compiler for that language in that language. Okay. Okay. So we'll run this on our test file. We'll look at the AST, see what we get. Then we'll test our error conditions. I've heard of it. I haven't done much with it. I mean, I've done message passing, but I think in the context you're talking about, well, yeah, I guess I would need clarification on what you're what you mean by task stealing. Yeah, the message passing part, I understand. I'm not sure if there's special meaning when you say parallel and task stealing. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Yeah. I guess because I'm missing the colons. Okay. Okay. So to me, first off, like MPI, which typically is just called IPC, right? If it's on one machine or it's between cores of a CPU or multiple cores of the same machine, you have inter-process communication. That might use a messaging approach, or it might not. And then at that point, you have to kind of define, see, this is where things get really messy, right? Because in the simplest of cases, messaging can be very simple, but you have to know, again, the context under which that's being used, right? So messaging can imply queuing, it can imply a whole bunch of things. But I mean, you could build a messaging IPC that just uses memory, right? And it could be very, very simple. I'm not sure task stealing, what that is. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, unless that's like you're actually writing a kernel or something yourself. Perhaps that has some meaning in that context. So your scheduler could have the notion of unfairness for particular purposes, and perhaps it steals time slices. And I don't know what else that would be. So. You don't need breaks in this. Breaks are implicit. There's no magical fall through. You have to explicitly declare fall through. Oh. Shit. That's the problem. That looks better. All right. Yes, now we're getting into the evaluators. So let's take a look at the AST graph. I can't spell. Okay, so we have a statement, which is a switch, and on the left-hand side, the expression that the switch is based on is a reference to the symbol X. Then we have the basic block of a switch, which has a series of statements. The very first one is case 0. And then that has a basic block, which has a call to print. And then statement 1, or the next statement, is a case for 1, which has a block that calls to print 1. Then the next is this guy. Oh, interesting. Is this right? No, that's not right. Ah, crap. Yeah, that's getting parsed wrong. All right, gotta fix that. Yeah, colon is a problem here. Because I kind of sort of was able to work around it in the other case, but here, when it's the default, this is getting parsed as the type for that, which is not correct. I have a feeling this is why Rust uses the arrow in this scenario. Hey, Vinalt. Otherwise, everything else looks good. It's just this one that's a problem. Cool. What topic? Oh, nice. control flow operator. Yeah, see, the colon operator is the same. It's for typing, which I believe is why they introduced the arrow operator in this case, because it is difficult to disambiguate this. Control flow operator. Have I ever had problems with my hands? Yes. I have, I guess, been fairly disciplined in my typing over the years, so I don't have severe carpal tunnel syndrome. I'm sure I'm in the early stages of it, no doubt. And certainly if I code for a really long time, I will notice. But yeah, I definitely have had problems with my hands. One of my fingers, I have what's known as trigger finger. Now, I've actually managed to kind of control it with nutrition and just some exercises. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking, like, do I really need the colon? That's a good point. I had debated it. I guess it really doesn't serve much purpose. Other than there isn't that little, I don't know, visual indicator there. But I don't know. I mean, from a parsing perspective, that does simplify it. And it does eliminate that case. So I don't know. I'll take a look at that. Oh wait, I do still have to condition it though. If So if we see a token that's not the left curly brace, where's that going to work? Yeah, see that? This works if I assume you have to have the block. But what if you just had this, right? Which should be valid. Well, that's not going to, it's going to be difficult to disambiguate that then in the parser. Sure, Slayer Dark, go ahead. Okay, so in the Lexer, I introduced the control flow operator, which I think I'm okay with because I am eventually going to want to do like matching or more complex matching syntax, and I think that having this operator is appropriate for that. And this is distinct from the colon, so we don't run into the ambiguities there because the colon does have a kind of very distinct purpose on its own. So I just switched the logic here to look for the control flow operator, and that should save us from the other issues, and I don't need to be worried about precedence here as much. Okay. So, Root Guy says, shout out to all the folks who use Liz. Woo, woo. So, Slayer Darth asks a very interesting question, and I think my answer might be somewhat surprising. I do not believe that it is just limited to young folks. Boy, where do I even start? As with all things like this, I don't know exactly where the transition point was. I don't know. I mean, my feeling is that the transition point feels relatively recent, within the past 10 to perhaps as far back as 15 years. But I'm going to hedge and say it's closer to 10, maybe slightly before that. Here's what I see. And I don't think it's limited to young folks. I think in young folks, it's more pronounced, perhaps, because of the position they're in their life. And so they're trying to learn. But I don't think it's their problem. So let me see if I can explain this. What I notice in our world today, and of course, certainly most of what I'm saying here is my experience in the United States. Again, this is likely going to be different to some extent in different parts of the world, but I don't think in most of the Western world, let's say, I don't think there's that much variance. And the issue, if I were to try to sum it up in a word or, couple words, would be that intellectualism is culturally frowned upon. Now, obviously, there's a lot of dimension to that. But the headline is that being smart will get you kicked in the balls. And by being smart, what I mean here is look, to do anything in our world, you have to be engaged with it. You have to touch it. You have to probe it. You have to question it. You have to piss it off. You have to argue with it. You have to demand things from it. Whatever that it is, put anything in that pronoun slot. Yes, probe it. Anal probe it. You have to do these things. You cannot, if you are intellectually curious, if you are trying to learn something, I mean, really trying to learn it, you almost have to be an annoying pain in the ass, right? Or I think the perception of others to you, the learner, again, if you're doing it the way I conceive of active learning, true active engaged learning, our society is not appreciative of that. Our society is about rules. It is about procedure. It is about, you are in this state You therefore cannot be in any other state than the state we say you should be in. So therefore, if you try to break out of that state, if you try to do your own thing, right? For lack of better definition, you will get smacked down. And what I see, and again, this is why I don't blame young people here. They get smacked down several times and they give up. They wise up. They realize, oh, I'm not meant to do this. Or if I do this, I am always going to be at odds with all the people around me. Therefore, do I want to be in that state? No. And this has broad repercussions for everything, in my opinion. You can see the tendrils of this issue throughout our economy, our banking system, finance, education, the workplace. Everybody has learned that the answer is get along, go along to get along. Do not question, do not think outside of the box, contrary to what any marketing slogan or recruiter or anybody else might say they want. They don't want that. They do not want you to think outside of the box. They do not want you to be creative. They do not want you to question the status quo. They do not want you to use what you are supposedly building up during your education. They don't want you to use that. Well, people don't try because, again, like I say, this is a cultural, societal issue. It's systemic now. It's built in. And it's gotten to the point where the pressure to conform, the pressure to not be outside of the status quo is so great that it basically forestalls that process, right? Period. So you're right, they don't even try, but they don't try for reasons that aren't, people just assume it's laziness, right? They just assume that these young millennials or whatever, Gen Yers, don't care, don't want to try, they don't want to do it. But I don't think that's the case. I think the case is more, again, they've been programmed, for lack of a better word. So to me, and I'm going to use this example loosely, but I think it's kind of true. If you've ever watched Gordon Ramsay and you've watched him deal with other owners or other chefs that he's working with, right? Here's a guy who obviously really cares about what he's doing, okay? He's into that topic deeply, and he cares about it. He cares about what's going to happen. So first, right there, everybody is kind of taken aback by his intensity because he cares. And see, nowadays, nobody really, and I say nobody, but a lot of people have been trained not to care. They've been trained that caring is equal to pain. Caring is equal to backlash. Caring is equal to losing your job. Because if you care, then that means you have an ethical center. And if you have an ethical center, then that means you have scruples. And if you have scruples, that means there are things you won't do, or there are things that you will absolutely draw a line on. And, you know, that again comes back to this whole thing. it's, you can't just go along to get along. Because if you do all the time, now I'm not saying that you want to intentionally be an ass all the time, no, or that you even need to be. What I'm saying is, though, if you're really trying to push your boundaries, if you're really trying to learn, then you are going to create friction. And what I see is a society that has evolved this mechanism that inhibits that process. Because look, a lot of the guys I remember from my early years were intense. They were really into this stuff. And if you fucked up a soldering job, I remember one guy he was probably 18 and I was a bit younger, and he would let you know when you did dumb shit, right? But nowadays that stuff doesn't happen. And there's lots of, I think, underlying mechanisms at play, unfortunately, but yeah, without that, right? Without that ability to be able to go out there and do your own thing, it's been pasteurized, it's been homogenized, it's been spun down to death to the point where, yeah, I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but the impression I get from a lot of people, young, old, whoever, is they just want to take the course, right? They just want, oh, I show up, I take the test, you check a checkbox, I'm now X, therefore I can get Y, right? It's all proceduralism. It's all just because that's what they've been told. They've been told and trained and prepared to expect that as long as you go through these magical tubes, right, then you get to the end of this thing and something happens. And then if you get to the end of that thing and the thing that you thought was going to happen doesn't happen, well, it obviously was your fault, right? You did something wrong. And so then you go through more tubes and, and that process just repeats. So, but again, I want to, say it's not just young people. I don't think, yes, again, you can put a magnifying glass there and you can see it, I think, a bit clearer there because of where they're at in their life. But I think it applies to everybody nowadays. So Slayer Darth's question was, people don't want to think for themselves. And you can see that, right? People do not apply logical reasoning to anything anymore. And if you use logical reasoning with people, it throws them for a loop. They can't understand it. If you point things out, right, to people that are obvious to you because you're applying more of your brain cells, right, to the process. And I'm not saying they don't have the brain cells. I'm saying they just don't use them. Not because of laziness or willfulness. It's they just have been trained not to. So, yeah, I see this everywhere. And it's not, we're not in a good place. Let's put it that way. In my opinion, we are not in a good place. And this is only going to get worse. And yeah. So I wish I had a good answer for it, but I don't. Yeah. I mean, we could postulate on the reasons why things are the way they are. I have my theories. And I think actually, Eric, I think his name's Eric Weinberg, is that right? Yeah. He actually has, I thought he had a pretty good explanation for why things are kind of the way they are right now. And essentially what it comes down to is after World War II, we had this exponential growth and it was insane. And there was kind of this, things were laid down into the fabric of society that this growth, this prosperity that we're having, it'll be like this forever. You'll always have jobs, everything will always be great, it'll always grow, but it only takes like a couple of minutes to step back and realize that you can't apply an exponent forever. You're going to have too many doublings and things are going to go kaput. But up until I would say around the 1970s, that those promises were being fulfilled, or apparently so. And then right around probably 1975, it stopped. And now we're, 40 some years past that point, and we're now in this world where now it's probably in government and industry's best interests to not, again, dumb down is not the right term, because I don't think anybody's lost. I don't think if we were to IQ test the entire population, I don't think the numbers have changed, right, in terms of distribution. Humans are still humans. But what we have done is we have slowly built new systems and models that discourage people from truly applying themselves. Because if people have, and again, this is just my pet theory, I don't have any proof for this, it's my contention that if people truly are independently thinking about things and really logically analyzing things, then it doesn't take them very long to realize where the source of the problems are. And then they become disenfranchised, like seriously disenfranchised, and they might just be motivated enough and experienced enough to be able to then do something about it. And I think there is a recognition amongst those in power that the future is not bright. It may be bright for some folks, very limited number of folks, but for the vast majority, it is not bright. And I think they are, again, just my theory, but I think we are where we are today intentionally. It was by design, and I think it's going to continue to get worse because they're trying to gear the population to a point where things are even worse than they are right now. So Root Guy says, I also think the internet makes it easier to get access to information. That's why people go into the doctor and self-diagnose. No. Yes, you're right. You can get the information on the internet. I have several medical conditions. Turns out I have a genetic heart condition. It's familial. It's on the Italian side of my family. It goes back many, many, many generations. But you would not believe how much pain I had to go through. I mean, I was having serious problems, but the doctors wanted to send me to shrinks, right? The reason people go into a doctor and self-diagnose is because the doctors are arrogant pricks and they don't listen to their patients and they're lazy. Now, you can make all these arguments in the US at least. Well, they only have, 2.6 minutes to deal with a patient and they're not paid enough and yada, 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 yada. But this all goes back to everything has to be in a track, a rut, right? Everything has to be standardized, right? And if you are a zebra, if you come in and you don't fit the mold, if they can't just, oh, you're the sixth guy I've seen today that has XYZ, and everybody has that. They can't take themselves out of that mold and really apply all that education they spent money on. They can't apply it. Now, I'm not saying all doctors, because I actually did finally find one doctor who, after listening to me describe my symptoms and taking some tests, in 5 minutes knew immediately what I had. But he was like 1 out of 20 doctors I had to go to finally get that answer, right? And once I had the answer, then he was able to navigate me back through other doctors to get the right test, and then you get the test and, oh, genetic, oh yeah, look at that. That's what you have, So it happens everywhere in our system, right? And so it's not, I think most people, even though the information is available, would rather not be self-diagnosing. But they get to that point because they're frustrated. They can't, they keep going to the doctor and they're told they're, having emotional issues. Go get a happy pill, or they go to doctors and the doctors just tell them they're fat, or just, eat nothing but raw vegetables, and these things don't solve their problem, right? And so people do amazing things when, their life is on the line, in my opinion. Yeah, did you try not being anxious? Right, exactly. You seem like a really high-strung guy. Maybe you just need to go on vacation, right? Yeah, again, and you see this in law, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to court and, I read and I apply the information that I learn, and the system just isn't prepared for that. It just doesn't work that way. So anyway, yeah. It's all fucked up. All right, let's take a look at the ESD. Yes, this looks much better. So here's our switch, there's X, there's our basic blocks. 0 case, 1 case, 2 case, and the default case. Perfect. By the way, you still didn't tell us your field. What are you referring to, Mr. Wormhole? Not sure I remember. Okay. Now, let's put... Oh, I never went to university. Let's put a fall through here. Let's see what that looks like. Here we go. That doesn't seem right. Why is this a symbol? No, that's not right. Oh, did I ever? I know I did. Okay, it's fall through mode. Fall through statement. Oh, I bet. Did I forget that? I think I did. Oops. No, I did put it in here. Oh, that's why. That's the issue there. Yeah, if you're that far into it, then finish. It's not... Yeah, if you only have 1 year left, you know, muscle your way through it. And you know, what I can tell you is credentialism is getting worse. And so you're much better off with the piece of paper than without it. So, yeah. There we go. Fall through. All right. That looks great. Okay, so now the next step is, so I guess I was thinking that I would need to, I think I'm going to come back to that. If I need to make a relationship there, I'll come back and change it. Because technically, the fall through is related to the block that it's in. Okay, so on the parsing side, I think we're good there. Oh, let's just test a couple other things real quick. Let's take a case statement, put it outside. The problem, Lordborn, is that the media and high schools and guidance counselors and parents believe the opposite of what you believe or what you perceive. I agree with you, right? Like, a university education could. Here's the error. Case can only be valid within a switch. But what's happened is somehow, right, we've gotten to this point where the media has harped on this all these years, that you're a failure if you don't go to college. You can't get a job if you don't go to college. You can't go to college, get a degree, go to college. Did you know if you get a degree, you make millions of dollars more? Of course, what they don't tell you is that that's a retrospective study, and that was based on people back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that were like the first people that were getting bachelor's degrees. And so, yes, of course, their salaries were going to be disproportionately higher. And if you do the study again with people nowadays, their salaries are actually lower. But it doesn't matter. Again, people don't use their logical facilities. It's all just cargo culting. Everything is cargo culting, right? Oh, look, these people over there, they're cool, they're hip, they appear to be successful. Let's cargo cult them. Oh, look, every other company is doing this thing called Agile, so we should do it too, because that's the magic incantation that makes the juju bees come out of the sky, right? That's how our entire fucking world works now, right? Oh, look, that famous person on TV drinks cat piss, and because they drink cat piss and their skin looks wonderful, everybody should drink cat piss. And Gwyneth Paltrow sticks, a jade jewel up her juju, and she's rich and famous, so we should buy those too, and we should do that. This is it. This is how it works. And if you try, no, it's not new, although I guess you could say because of this intense media environment we have now, we see it, or some of us see it, I guess. Back in the 40s and 50s, it was maybe more of a refined understanding that you would have to come through in a different way, but DevOps, yes. Everybody, all the fangs do DevOps. Everybody has infrastructure as code, so therefore we should all have infrastructure. You forgot containers too, right? Everybody's got everything containerized. So you have to container everything, including cat. Because if you want to text out, you want to dump out a text file to the terminal, you really should be running that through a container because containers, right? Exactly. But again, see, that's exactly it. I love how people have DevOps teams now, but that's not the point of DevOps, right? The whole point of DevOps is it's supposed to be something that developers do for themselves. It's just a part of the product. It's a part of the development process, right? It's such a simple concept, but again, everybody cargo cults. And when you cargo cult, you do things incorrectly because you fundamentally misunderstand the thing that you're imitating, right? It's scary. It really is It really is scary. Fall through only valve. Perfect. All right. Not that one. That one. Okay. Do I have... No. All right, so we need switch, we need case, and we need fall through. Good luck. Okay, so we've got the switch element. Now we need the case element and fall through. And fall through is essentially like break, similar to. Anti-break, yeah. I've come to the conclusion this is a Mojave thing. Something happened in OS 10, and I don't know if it like dynamically is changing the device identification on the USB hub, or there's just a bug in OBS, but very strange. Hey, NAR002. Hey, Bryce910. I am working on a bootstrap compiler for a programming language I'm designing called Basecode. I need to take a short break. I will be right back. Yeah, this is C++. Okay, I'm back. All right. All right. Okay, so for a switch statement, we create a scope block, we evaluate the expression of it actually, so we don't really want to do that though. Because it's on the right hand side. Okay, so So for case, it's almost identical, except the expression can be optional because we have that default. There you go. And that was the last thing that had to go into the parser. So there's a bug in the with did I not put those in? Misspelled. Excuse me. Okay, so there's a bug with a with parser. However, I think it's pretty easy to fix. And there's the comma issue. So I need to fix those two. And then Yay! Yep, there's the switch. All right. Cool. Very good. So let's review that. That touched a lot of parts. So I added the control flow operator similar to Rust. It's an equal, it's a little arrow, the equal. And that was really, again, for the switch, the individual case statements. Colon has a different meaning, and it's kind of, I can disambiguate part of it, but not all of it. So it was just easier to introduce a different operator there. And having the operator is important because there's a couple different potential valid parsing schemes, and this operator helps to kind of separate them out. So then in the lexer, I added a little lexer for that, added it to the map, and I also fixed fall through. I was checking to make sure that it was space after, but that doesn't really work. So I changed the logic on that. And then for the control flow operator, it's pretty easy, right? If it matches that symbol, then that's what it is. And so then on the AST side, I added case expression, fall through statement. I already had switch, added them to the name map, and added, so I needed 2 stacks for switch, and one for switches and one for case, because cases can only be valid under switch and fall through can only be valid under case. So I have to track which one is current, or if there is no current one, then that can be an error case. So then I added the builders for those nodes. I added the stacks for those new nodes, and I clear those out and reset. Added, this is very boilerplate code. Just manage the stack for each one of them. And then the builder functions for the case node and the switch node and the fall through node. Very simple. Then in the parser, I already had this keyword literal parser that just handles relatively straightforward keywords like continue, import, break, that sort of stuff. So switch, case, and fall through could be handled by this parser, so I didn't need to create a new one. So I hoisted out the AST builder in this to a local just to kind of clean up, make the code a little bit shorter. For switch, we create the switch node, we push it onto the switch stack on the AST builder. We defer a pop of that switch, so then the other activity that happens here is active while that switch is on the switch stack. So this is pretty simple. We parse, we expect an expression, and we expect we expect 2 expressions essentially, right? So the left-hand side is the thing that we're evaluating. The right-hand side is the block. The case, so we look up the current switch. If there is no switch, that's an error. I tested this works. We create the case, again, we push this on the case stack, defer a pop. If we see, so we have case, and then if we see the control flow operator, then that means this is the default case. There is no expression, and we just consume the control flow operator and parse whatever the block is or whatever the statement is after it. Otherwise, we're expecting some kind of an expression that we're going to evaluate for comparison purposes, and then we're looking for the control flow operator, and then we parse whatever the body of that case is. And then fall through, we look to see if there's a current case. If there isn't, that's an error. I tested that, that's working. Otherwise, we return the fall through node, and that's it. And then, so I added 2 elements. We added fall through, case, and switch. I added types for those to the enum, and then we added those to the name map. And then in code down formatter, I added the 3 new elements to handle here. So fall through, switch, and case. And then the elements themselves are fairly straightforward. Switch has a scope and an expression on it. Yeah, we haven't done any code gen there yet. Fall through has really just an optional label. I'm not sure if I want to support fall through to a specific label. I thought for now it doesn't really hurt to have that in there, but it's just null for now. And then case, again, scope and an expression, really easy, not much there. Then in AST evaluator, I added handlers for case, switch, and fall through, and put those in the map. So fall through is real simple. We just make the fall through element and return it. And for now, like I say, we're just assuming the user specified label is null. For switch, we evaluate the expression, right, that we're switching on. We evaluate the block, we make the switch element. And then for scope, or I'm sorry, for case, the expression is optional. So if there is an expression node there, we evaluate it. Otherwise, and we always evaluate the body, the block. We create the case, and that's it. And then we had some new files. Fall through, case, switch. All right, just build that, make sure. Hi, Viking Coder. I am working on a bootstrap compiler for something called Basecode, which is a programming language that I am designing. So I'm just finishing up all the parser stuff finally. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to my regular schedule. I mean, I have the compiler generates bytecode for some of the really simple cases, but I wanted to. There were things in the parser that weren't done, and I wanted to finish that and kind of close that off. Say, okay, that's good enough for the bootstrap version, and then I could just focus primarily on code generation, all the, compiler innards at that point. No LLVM, it's just pure C++. All right. So let's check that in. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's run our tests. Yeah, okay. These are the two known failing cases. That's fine. We didn't break anything new. It's always good. All right, so this is called C-Line. It's from JetBrains. All right, yay! All the parser tasks I had are done. So like I say, there's a couple bugs. One bug is in the with prefix parser. This one, you need to check if there's a current with on the stack. If true, and with node left-hand side is a member access and create a binary. Yeah, so essentially, as you nest with constructs, in order to keep continuity, we need to create binary operators that connect them with their parent. So that needs to be done, and then the comma issue. So, and I think the way I'm going to solve the comma issue is, let's see, we have, or no, let's do struct literal. So the issue with the commas comes about because of assignment. And so I think what I'm going to do, which I don't really like, but I'm kind of at the point where I think, well, okay, for the bootstrap, I will do this, and then I'll think of a better way to handle it. When I rewrite it, self-hosted, I'm thinking instead of using the colon equal here, I will just use equal for named parameters, right? Because this is a different this syntax is not defined anywhere in the language right now. And so now alternatively, we could use the control flow operator too, which I kind of like that maybe more, I don't know. So one of those I'm kind of tempted to use, because then the comma issue I can fix. I don't have to do the goofy stuff I'm doing right now. And the issue with comma, again, with assignment is we want to support, you know, multiple assignments. So if I have A and I have B, I want to be able to do, you know, I want to be able to do that, which the parser does support this. But in order for this to work, right, this has to be a higher precedence than the comma. But the problem is, in this case, that can't be, because you don't want this to be A equals a list of this, right? You want it, you know, A equal 1, B equal 2. The other alternative here is inside of these, instead of commas, I could use a different kind of separator. I know, yeah, so one of those something has to happen there. So in this particular kind of situation, named parameters or map parameters, key value pairs, let's call them key value pairs, I'm thinking that I probably will just use the arrow syntax here to kind of make it clear that it's a key value pair scenario. Because this is really unencumbered syntax. It doesn't impact commas, so I can fix it to where commas are permanently, you know, one priority level lower than assignment. I don't have to swap them like I'm doing now. That'll clean up some of the parser infrastructure, and then it will solve this. So those are the last two issues. I'm sure there's tiny little bugs everywhere. But we'll flesh those out as we use it more. So yeah, those are the two big ones. And then, to my knowledge, and once that's done, I don't think I have any other pressing parser issues. Oh, the UTF-8 stuff. Yeah, I'll visit these. I think most of these are fine. I think probably what I'll end up doing is just making a short either macro or a little function that handles doing the conversion if necessary. Yeah, this, what was this for? Oh, type parameters. Yeah, okay. So I can revisit that. This one we already talked about. This, I'm okay with this for now. Again, I think for the bootstrap, I'm all right with that one. That's it. So, yeah. So I will review all these in the parser, and I'll do something about the comma stuff, and that's pretty much it. because the plain equal sign has been a bane in programming languages for years. It seems like you should be able to use it, but the problem is, you know, it's just not clear. And a single equals in math has a different meaning than the common meaning that it would have in code. So again, I go back to the colon equal is very clear, right? It's assignment, and it's a distinctive syntax that cannot be confused with comparison in any relational operation whatsoever. So yeah, in general, the single equals I'm trying to avoid it. No, comparison's double equal. Again, like I say, single equal is, in my opinion, single equal is problematic. So within Basecode Alpha, you know, I'm trying to avoid it. Don't support what? Yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, you can't please everyone, you know? Okay, so I do also need to kind of go through and tidy these up. A lot of these are kind of like high level buckets. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go through these and I think break them up a little bit, make them clearer. But yeah, all this stuff is code gen, really, so, or related to it. So that's what's left. So yeah, it's looking good. Parsing is done. I will finish the bug fixes today, this afternoon, and then tomorrow I will start working on code gen. So lots and lots to do there, but I think most of that if typing a single character is a chore, yeah, here's the other thing you don't know about Basecode, possibly. You can define your own syntax. So the idea is down the road, can't do it today, but down the road, part of the entire idea behind Basecode is that it's designed to build other languages easily. So if you don't like the syntax of Basecode Alpha, then, you know, You can design whatever syntax you like. So okay, so let's see what else. Here's my thing, right? So I'm all for optimizing, right? I mean, I'm all for cutting things down and being efficient and not doing stuff. But at the same time, I also have kind of learned over the years that I like clarity, right? I like cleanliness. I like to be able to look at things, and aside from void-comp Phil's valid point that those with challenged sight, you know, might not be able to do this quite as easily. But again, you know, I only have so many things to work with. But again, I want to be able to look at code, and I want to be able to visually distinguish things clearly. Also, a lot of this is simplicity in parsing. You know, the reason that C and C++ parser, well, not C so much, but C++ parsers are so damn slow is the language is very ambiguous. It's difficult to parse quickly. I want to avoid that. But at the same time, you know, again, I don't want to go Lisp, right? I don't want to force people to code in ASTs because, in my opinion, we've had 60 years of Lisp, and Lisp is still niche, right? It hasn't conquered the world. It's not going to conquer the world. Languages like that are not going to conquer the world. Not that I think mine will, so that's not what I'm saying, but I am trying to take the lessons of history here and combine things that I think have a good chance of being generally well accepted. But the other side of that too is, you know, you say it's 4 characters to assign one variable. Okay, that's true. But let's say you type 100 words a minute, right? What is that? I mean, that's rounding up, that's 8 seconds of your typing experience. And are you defining variables on every line of code? I would hope not. So it's not like it's an 8-second hit every single time you're writing a line of code. It's an 8-second hit, theoretically, right, when we're defining something, right? Defining or assigning a variable. And I'm not saying assignment's not common, it is, but the language also has a with construct. If you're doing a lot of assignments in a row, then there is a shortcut in the syntax to avoid some of that. So, you know, it's, yeah, again, maybe. I've been hearing people say that for decades, man. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, right? I mean, goodness, Clojure's pretty cool, and I give Rich Hickey lots of credit. He actually took Lisp and put it on top of 2 very popular runtimes, which was one of the big issues with Lisp, right? Like Common Lisp and, you know, what was SBC and whatever the other various Lisps were, you know, and got rid of the big issue, which was this isn't compatible with our world. And, you know, I'm not saying Clojure isn't popular, but it's still extremely niche. And, you know, it's like small talk. You know, I like small talk too, but it's too foreign. It doesn't fit. And there's issues. So, you know. Yeah. Down with the classes. Down with the classes. All right, guys, I got to take my daughter to school this morning, so I have to wrap up a little early. But tomorrow I will start getting into CodeGen again, and we'll start digging into all the good stuffs. So, because the parsing is done, so, and at least as far as the bootstrap is concerned for now, I think this is what it's going to be. So anyway, I will be back online. Yeah, parsing's done. So tomorrow it will be CodeGen. We're back into CodeGen. You're welcome. I hope you come back tomorrow. Tomorrow, like I say, we're getting into more interesting things than just trying to clean up the parser and finish that part. So, yeah. All right, everybody. Have a good day, and I will see you all tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Mountain Time. Have a good one. Bye.